Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Jake Kovalcik. Jake is an old friend of mine. We played lacrosse together at Gettysburg College. I'm sure we're going to reminisce a little bit. Jake, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. I know we're going to dive into what you're up to today. I know you're a co-founder of Top Star Athletic Club. Tell us a little bit about that before we jump into
Yeah,
your backstory.
yeah, sure. So Topstar basically exists to make NIL work better. We're trying to take the sort of the whole system is in chaos. We're trying to put standards around it and really make it better for student athletes, better for brands, better for the future. And we're really trying to take what is concentrated at the top of NIL and bring it down to actually more kids like you and I that don't necessarily have that huge following, aren't playing a, quite frankly, revenue generating sport, and
Sure.
really trying to just help spread the NIL wealth down. And then at the same time, give these kids something that I really needed when I graduated, which was some experience with work, because as we were one of the best teams in the nation. So we didn't
Yeah.
have a whole lot of time for internships or jobs or things like that. So you really kind of go into the professional world a little bit unequipped. So we're trying to help kids in that regard as well. So like better for student athletes, better for brands, better for the future. Top
Love
Star.
it. So for the listener who's unfamiliar with NIL, can you just define that for us?
Yeah. So in 2021, the NCAA finally allowed student athletes to be who they are, right? They can monetize themselves. So NIL stands for name, image, and likeness.
Got it. Awesome. And I know, and we're going to get into some of this, but you've started a few businesses along the way. Is that right?
Yeah, this is I guess the third business that I've started officially. This is the first one that I've sort of gone out on my own with and done everything sort of soup to nuts, and then brought a co-founder in. Usually it's been like me and a co-founder move things forward, and then we raise capital and do things like that. But this was the first one that I had to file my own taxes with, which was interesting.
No, that's really good because our listeners, are largely entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs. So we'll talk about that. Um, let's jump back. So as I mentioned, you and I played lacrosse together. You were one of the best goalies in the country, and and we had, as you said, we had a very good team at Gettysburg. Lot of great memories, and I don't think the listener wants us to just reminisce about every goal I scored and every save you made, but
They should.
we'll
They
do that.
really
They
should.
really should. They're missing out. I agree. But let's talk about college and kind of,
Yeah.
I know we're going to get into some difficult topics, especially pertaining to emotional health and mental
Yeah.
health, which I think is really relevant, unfortunately, very relevant in today's world. Um, but what was your college life like? Talk about that for us.
Oh, geez. So college life was, as I've learned, pretty similar to most other student athletes. In season 3 a days, out of season 2 a days. So not a whole lot of time for much else from like I guess, professional development perspective, from a social life perspective. I mean, we had training rules, we had all these things that we had to adhere to. We had practices, like I said, 6 a.m. practice after classes, and then study hall at night. So I don't know that I mean I thought it was sort of typical for college students,
Hmm.
but as I'm learning with my daughters, is very not typical. So
Sure.
it was pretty much I was at school to play lacrosse,
Yeah,
and the grades were secondary. It was just sort of
sure.
a means to an end.
No, and I can fully relate. It was, man, I transferred in. I went to Johns Hopkins for a year and a half. And the reason I bring that up is you might think, oh, Hopkins lacrosse, that's obviously way more demanding than, some Division III school. They were both extremely demanding. There wasn't a whole lot else we could have done time wise at Gettysburg. I mean, it was for lacrosse. That's why I was there as well. I mean, it was number one. And
Yeah,
so it was not a secondary thing. It was everything. And you and I were talking before
yeah,
we hit record about how your identity, for better or for worse, gets wrapped up in being a lacrosse
yeah.
player. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that, like we actually talked about that, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that was one of the things that I found to be the most challenging after graduating. It was like, and I put a lot of this deliberately into Topstar, and I'll talk about that later. But like that loss of team, that loss of just like this group of people that like you go to war with, and then just all of
Absolutely.
a sudden it just turns off. I mean, it's
It's
like, for you it was, a lot of the same way as it was for me, right? Like we went up
yeah,
to Rochester, we played Nazareth, you lost to
right.
Nazareth, and it's like you came back home, and now what?
It's
It's like what, and then September rolls around, or late August rolls around, and you're not going back to school, and you're not playing lacrosse again. And that transition for me was particularly difficult because everything I did was for lacrosse. Everything I did was as an athlete, to be competitive, to be the best I possibly could. And I
mhm,
focused so much of my energy on that. Once that was over, I mean, I was completely lost. And it wasn't for like a short amount of time either. I mean, it was a solid decade that I
mm.
just didn't know
Wow.
what to do with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not going to make the episode about me, but I just can relate so much. I was sharing actually last night with my wife that I joined the military eventually after college, and I got deployed, was on a 10-man team overseas in Iraq, and literally went to war with these guys. And
Yeah.
I feel a closer bond to my lacrosse teammates than I do to those guys for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because we put 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears into this, and we had a very defined goal of a national championship.
Yeah.
And my entire background was becoming, meant, it was all about lacrosse, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the military thing for me was like, oh, like it was to serve that need that you just mentioned, to be plugged into a team and to be a part
Yeah.
of something bigger than myself. Um, so absolutely, there's a huge void, and I felt that 100% like you did. So talk about that just from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
What did that look like that decade after
Oh
college?
man. I mean, to be totally truthful, it's like I'm still sort of looking for it, because one thing you really learn, it's like, when you are playing as high level of sport as we played, and we were the best team in the nation.
Hmm.
My 3 years of
Yeah.
starting there weren't many times that we fell out of that number one spot or number two spot. Like we were always there.
Hmm.
When you have this group of guys around you that are all laser focused on the same goal, and everybody's moving in the same direction, you have one thing, to your point, you're trying to get to that national championship. It just doesn't exist in corporate America. Like it really
No.
doesn't. It's like the team concept has been sort of co-opted by corporate America, and they aren't
Yeah.
teams. Call them teams because I just don't
Yeah.
think saying a group of people generally pointing in the same
You
direction like
you
a
say
flock of sheep.
co-opted, I'll say bastardized.
Sure, we can say bad words, bastardized by corporate
Yeah.
America. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like it just, to say the word team is easier than to say, like I said, like, it's basically a group of people generally going in the same direction, like a flock of geese. And that's sort of the way I've been describing it, because
Sure.
that's what it is. It's like you've got everybody, they're kind of in a triangle, they're kind of going the same direction. Then there's like
Yeah.
four geese over here, and they're like, why are they going west? And then it's
Right.
like that's like the guy in the back of the room that's sitting there trying not to be noticed. And then there's this other
Sure.
person who's like trying to figure out how they can take your job or whatever. It's just
Sure.
not all
It's
aligned.
not the
So
same.
you and I've talked to lots of student athletes, like former NFL guys, former NBA guys, like across the spectrum, MLB
Mm.
guys, and they
Yeah.
all say the same thing. It's like that loss of team is like it
Yeah.
hurts, like it physically
Absolutely.
hurts. So trying to find that in corporate America, I mean, it is difficult because it
Yeah.
just doesn't exist, because everybody, even on a CrossFit, like everybody wants to score goals, everybody wants to strip people, everybody wants to win
Right.
face-off, but everybody also wants to win. You are there to win. It
Totally.
is not the same in corporate America. Like some people just don't want to lose their job, and some people are just like, I'm going to do exactly what the guy before me did so I can get my 3% raise and go back and
Right.
home and do whatever.
So did you get a job after school? Did you start a business right away? What did that look like for
No,
you?
I didn't know what to do. I went home and I was like, this was like the biggest shock in my life, because I was two-time All-American goalie at Gettysburg. We
Yeah.
were a team captain, and I'm like, who's
Yeah.
not going to want to hire me? I mean, honestly, like I have all
Sure.
these intangibles that I know businesses want. Who's not going to hire me? Short answer, pretty much everybody. because I had no experience. It's like you come out of college and like
Right.
you're charged with, as a goalie, especially, right? As a goalie, you are the heart of the team. Like everything in the defense resonates from you. It goes
Yeah,
out.
you're the quarterback of the defense. It's such a
Yeah.
critical position for
The,
sure.
the only time that you can actually not pay attention is when the ball is with you attack folks down on the other end. And
Right.
like, then it's like, okay, cool. But like, what's coming back
Right.
up at?
Hmm.
But it's like, you just, it's,
Yeah. So okay, so you had trouble getting a job, it sounds like.
yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to do. And like I said, like no one wanted to hire me. So
Mhm.
um I didn't have any idea. So I just sort of started doing like landscaping. Like that's what I did. And I did
Gotcha.
landscaping for a year. And then I finally got a corporate job. And then I got another corporate job. And then I did the corporate thing for, I don't know, almost a decade ago, more than maybe
Mm.
15 years until I ran into my first startup. And at that point, it was 2003. And I had no idea what a startup was. They weren't cool
Mhm.
yet. They were small
Right.
companies. Yeah, they're
Right.
just literally it's like, all right, we're a company of 12 people. We do pretty good job of making payroll sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes the
Yeah.
CEO has to go into her own bank account to pay you, which happened on more than one
Yeah.
occasion.
Yeah.
And that was like the biggest learning experience for me because the first time that somebody actually gave me the reins to be like,
Mhm.
you have to do more. Like you can't just like now you're not just doing media, you're not just doing whatever
Yes.
you're doing. Like you
Right.
have to do all these things. And oh, by the way,
Right.
we're going to teach you to do all these things so that you're not just okay at them, like you're pretty good at them. So
Sure.
getting exposed to that, I guess, early enough in my career really sort of changed the trajectory of my life because all of a sudden it's like I found this path where like I never fit in boxes. Like, as a
Mhm.
goalie, you
Mhm.
definitely don't fit
Yeah.
in boxes.
Every
We're
goalie has a few screws loose, and
yeah. Yeah, like
I
we
say that
don't.
as a compliment. I mean,
Yeah, I know. Take it as one. Thank you.
yeah, it's
We
yeah, for sure.
just don't, like,
Yeah.
and I mean, me in particular, right? Like, I was all over the field. I was
Mhm.
not a stationary goalie. I,
Right.
I
No, you were
had the,
mobile.
yeah, I had the unfortunate, like, or fortunate, depending on your perspective, um, luck of seeing Matty Palin play for Syracuse and watching him
Yeah.
run all over the place. I was like, I want to be like that guy.
I want to be
So,
him. Yep.
yeah. So, I'm running, I'm scoring goals, I'm throwing assists, I'm throwing behind the back passes as a goalie. And,
Yeah,
chances of losing is
you're a
mine.
very good athlete, that
Well, thank
you were
you.
very mobile. But yeah. And
So,
so yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So it's, like I just learned that you can do these other things as a net there. And so it
Sure.
sort of changed the trajectory of my life. And then I started looking for jobs that would give me those opportunities.
Gotcha. So in the previous 10 to 15 years in a corporate setting, what industry was that in? What did that look like?
Oh gosh. I worked for Anheuser-Busch for a while. Worked for Under Armour for a spell, and then most
Okay.
recently worked for Allstate for about 5 years, where we were building the largest telematics database, which is risk data, driving risk data.
Gotcha.
So
Um, so
lots
a
of
few
different
different,
verticals.
yeah, no, I'm like you. I bounced around a little bit. I'll be honest. I wasn't sure what, went and worked for a title company and then a mortgage company. Then I joined the military and just trying to obviously make some money, have a paycheck, but
Yeah,
also figure out my purpose, right? And
yeah, yeah,
the
truly.
direction call it calling, purpose, whatever you want to call it, but just what am I supposed to be doing? So,
Yeah,
um, and I think nowadays it's way more common to people change jobs all the time.
yeah,
Um, so okay, what did I guess your personal life look like? I know you went through some personal challenges
yep,
during that 15-year span, we'll
yeah,
call it. What talk about that a little bit?
yeah. Went through a divorce, which is never easy for anybody, especially when there's kids involved. Had to come to terms with a lot of things. Like if it's never easy. It's divorce is terrible. The thing that I think I took most from that entire experience, and really it's I guess it's like something I learned on the field, which is odd. I never really thought about it, but really like owning everything, being
I love that.
completely accountable to every single mistake I made. and
100%.
not trying to blame somebody else for the decisions I made, not
Hmm.
like pointing fingers, because at the end of the day, like it was nobody's fault but mine.
Hmm.
Like I made the bad choices. I made the bad decisions. It was me, like I reacted to the problem the way I reacted to it, and trying
Hmm.
to blame on somebody else for that, even my ex-wife,
Hmm.
it's stupid. Like it wasn't
Hmm.
her fault. It was the way I did it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
being absolutely brutally accountable to myself and to my kids,
Mm.
was the thing that ultimately kind of helped me get through that, because it is not an easy path. I have yet to find
No.
anybody who like has a wonderful experience going through a divorce.
Yeah, it
uh,
was right.
but
Um,
yeah, so it's difficult, man. Like there's
for
there's
sure.
this.
No, I thank you for sharing. I know it's not an easy topic to talk about. The ownership piece is something that comes up over and over and over on our show. Much easier for me to sit here and talk about than for me to actually do. So I'm not sitting here judging anybody for
Oh
not
no.
taking, but it's you're absolutely right. There's so much power in that though. It's not easy to do, but there's so much power in taking ownership and taking accountability for your own decisions. And it sounds like I'm sure there were things that went wrong in your life that weren't a result of your choices directly, right? But
Yeah.
it sounds like maybe some problems were there and then you would make decisions and then you would compound the problem.
Yes.
Again, not I don't I'm just I mean that applies
Look,
to
I mean,
everybody, right?
yeah, I mean, look, I'm an open book when it comes to this. I mean, obviously, like I'm not going to get into the very nitty details of things, but
For
when
sure.
it comes to like my personal accountability to things, when it comes to like, how I handled the things that I handled, like, yeah, I made mistakes. Like I made a lot of them. I mean, look, dude,
Yeah.
there was like a 2 year span. I couldn't even look in a mirror and look at
Mm,
myself because I just couldn't get out of my own way. I
mm.
couldn't figure it out. And then, I mean, you'll probably know who he is, Jocko Willink. You know who that guy is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Extreme
I
Ownership is his one book.
yeah, I have, yeah. So I happened to hear good,
Yeah.
right? And I get emotional talking about. I was it was bad, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I hear this good, and it's like, basically the takeaway is like, if you can get breath into your lungs, you can still move, and like you can
Mm.
still keep going forward. And
Hmm.
I finally, like, whatever that tapped into, it's like it was this dark hole that I was in, and like for the first
Hmm.
time in a long time, like I finally saw a crack of light,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh god damn, like I can get out of
Hmm.
this. And
Hmm.
it sure didn't happen overnight,
Yeah.
but it was like,
Right.
oh my god, like there was a chance, man. And so I just became ruthlessly, accountable to everything.
Mm.
And I just stopped with, quite frankly, with the BS, and just was like,
Hmm.
okay, enough. And so it's just this little thing. It seems so insignificant, but like
Hmm.
just the word is like good, you
Good.
know,
Yeah.
good. Like
So
you still got
that's
fight in you.
yeah. So and there was still you were hearing that there was good in you, right? And so it sounds like that sliver of light provided hope that
Yeah.
you didn't have before. No, I appreciate you sharing that. So was this like at what point in your life was that 2 year period that we're talking
Oh
about?
God, that was during the divorce. Yeah,
Got
I
it.
mean, it was a complete disaster.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's I can kind of like laugh about it now, because it's like I've come to
Sure.
terms with it. I've come to
Yeah.
terms with my mistakes. I've come to terms with the
Yeah.
things I did wrong. Like I did them. Like what am I
Right.
gonna hide from them? Like it's silly.
Right. Well,
So
and I'll just, and the point is not to pick you apart and put you down and make you
no,
relive. It's just, unfortunately, divorce is pretty common and
no,
it's a relatable thing for a lot of people. And, so if your message of hope can get to the person who's in that storm right now,
oh
that's the
God, I
goal of the
hope, man,
podcast.
because
That's what we're trying to do.
I hope so. Like honestly, like I've offered up to talk to a bunch of different people in my life that have gone through it, because quite frankly, like I had nobody. Like I literally had no one I could talk to. And like,
Hmm.
you're married, right? So you
Yeah,
understand your wife's friends and family become your friends and family. And
for sure.
when fractures,
Yeah,
it destroys your world. I mean, it just
sure.
utterly shatters your world. And you don't know, like for me in particular, like I had no idea where to go. I had no
Yeah.
idea what to do, and I broke, you know. And then
Sure.
over the course of that 2 years, trying to like figure out how do I do anything,
Yeah.
and kind of fix that.
Right.
I didn't have anybody. So, like there's been a few people in my life where I'm like, listen, man, like I understand this. I've
Yeah.
made all the mistakes. Like, trust me when I tell you I've made all these mistakes.
Hmm.
It's terrible. It sucks to go through,
Right.
but just keep going.
Yeah.
Just try not to make, just
The same mistakes.
try not to make it again.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Sure.
make them. It's just you're going to.
Absolutely. And
When
again,
you
yeah,
do,
and we're all, that's part of the show. We're all guaranteed to go through, you're going to go through additional adversity. I hope you never go through anything like that again,
me
but
too.
I am as well, right? We're all, it's going to happen. I mean, and
Yeah.
so if we can, it sounds like, just being able to just like you're doing now, reach out to people who may be in a similar situation, just, that element of community is so important.
It's
Um,
so
on,
important.
on my side, I think my siblings like my wife more than they like me. So I really, I'm kind of screwed there, but
My kids 100% like Michelle more than me, man. I get it.
but let's fast forward. So okay,
Sure.
so I'm sure you have that the accountability piece is huge, and I think that probably you've been applying that through the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
first startup, what did that first startup look like for you? And let's take it from there.
Oh gosh, the first one was we were so far ahead of our time. It was crazy. We were trying to do it was me and one of my buddies actually that I worked with at Allstate who brought me in there to help him. We were trying to build this Wi-Fi advertising network, and we were so far ahead of the curve. Nobody even knew what to do with it. So we eventually, had to shut that down. But now it's super commonplace where there's companies called Intersection that have, this Wi-Fi product. There's Wi-Fi in airports, what we were trying to do. We were
Sure.
focused mainly on like stadiums and bars and delivering content to there for, in exchange for advertising. But
Mm.
we were so far out ahead of the curve, like people couldn't even wrap
Hmm.
their head around what we were doing.
Gotcha.
So
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
one, both. The next one that I personally was involved in was called Sports Locker. We were this sort of mix between season long fantasy and daily fantasy.
Mm.
We had we had a great product.
Hmm.
There's still a market need for this product. It doesn't exist because like we were sort of doing fan engagement on, in the venue and off the venue and on the couch. So like we were bringing everybody together, and
Hmm.
we had the really unfortunate luck, if you will,
Hmm.
of having gambling become legal while we were building that product out. So
Mm.
effectively, what happens is um, everything just dies. Like people are like, "Well, no, we're going to go with DraftKings and FanDuel now," and that was the end of that one. And unfortunately, like it's just dead. So
Yeah.
that was a tough one because we had buy-in from like some of the big sports organizations, we had buy-in from advertisers, and we had buy-in from other partners. And just as soon as it all happened, like that was it. It was just
Hmm.
done. So
Interesting.
that was
Yeah, I'd
tough.
love to pick your brain after that because I'll dabble in that stuff a little bit, and it's fun. I mean, just the season long stuff versus DFS, and I know they do have some other kind of hybrid
Yeah.
formats out there like you're talking about. So yeah, both of those ideas in hindsight were genius, right? But it sounds like the timing and some external circumstances
Yeah.
that are out of
Dude,
your
timing is
control,
the
right?
thing. It
Yeah,
really
timing's
is.
a thing. So with those two ventures, how much approximately, like how much time and how much
Oh God.
capital, if you don't mind, like just, I know that's a negative approach, but most businesses fail. So
Yeah.
I think, on this show, I don't present entrepreneurship like it's this
No,
rainbows
don't
and
do it.
butterflies. Yeah, don't.
Don't do it. Tell everybody. Like
Absolutely. I'm with
unless
you.
you are a
I'm with
glutton
you.
for punishment, or you happen to have a really rich father, uncle, family member that loves
The
to just take
backstop.
money and light it on
Yeah.
fire, don't do it.
Don't
It's
do it.
terrible.
I it's just so funny you say that because it's tough, man. And we're gonna get into just the emotional drain. I mean, it's tough. And if you have a family, I mean, that spreads,
Yes.
it's not like having a job, 9 to 5 job and going home. So what was the toll on you? Like just
Oh God.
for looking at those two startups?
The first one wasn't terrible because, like we were sort of building it on the side. Like the startup that I was actually working for at that point was in the process of being sold for, I think the first time. I don't know if it was the first time, I guess. So we didn't really, like, everyone was kind of just, we were doing it on the side. So the first one
Gotcha.
wasn't terrible.
Hmm.
We didn't raise any capital. We definitely didn't
Hmm.
spend a lot of capital. I mean, I don't know if I spent 20 grand total. It was a lot.
Gotcha.
And just trying to like put together partnerships and things like that and have demo
Sure.
units, whatever. It wasn't terrible. That
Hmm.
one we ended up relatively unscathed. Sports Locker, not so much. Raised some money for that. Lost it all.
Hmm.
Like lost everything. Lost my money. Lost my investors' money.
Hmm.
It sucks. I mean, the accountability on that one is awful. It still hurts because
Hmm.
people trust you, they buy into you, and they're
Sure.
believing in you. So having that personal accountability, it hurts. And then when you
Sure.
can't even like get them back to even, and it's just gone. I don't
Yeah.
know how people do it. I mean,
Hmm.
it's terrible. Um,
Looking at
so
those two startups, and I know they're very different models,
yeah,
and um, what were one or two lessons learned from that, as far as, it could be about partnerships, partnering with the
yeah,
wrong people, or raising capital. Any lessons learned that you would
yeah. Oh,
now
absolutely.
apply?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Two big ones actually. Right off the
Okay.
top of my head, I know these because I applied them to Topstar. First things first, if you're going to be in the sports industry,
Hmm.
find a business savvy former pro at some, across a major sport that has a recognizable name. You
Mm.
absolutely need champions at the professional level to get you to those next level conversations.
Mm.
It's an absolute must. Second thing
Yes.
is, at least for us, I was determined to build a business first. So I took a
Mm.
business first approach as opposed to a tech first approach. Because the last thing that I wanted to do was put a whole bunch of money into technology and then get stuck in a situation like I got stuck in last time, where we had this technology, but we didn't have the business fully baked. And we
Sure.
thought we had the business fully baked because we had these emerging partnerships, which, like I mentioned with the FanDuel and DraftKings thing,
Mm.
just they fell apart. So what I wanted to do this time was not do that. So
Hmm.
we run this business. I mean, yeah, obviously we use tech, but we
Yeah,
have not
for sure.
built any custom anything yet whatsoever. I went out and I was just recklessly going after A, breaking our model, and B, making sure that we had a business before I went out and spoke to a single investor about this at
Hmm.
all. I've
Yeah.
like I have like my own little startup incubator, if you will,
Mm.
that like I stick ideas into, and then I play around with them, and I try to,
Hmm.
I build the models and whatever. Most of them die because I break them. I've tried to break Topstar over and over and over again, like, because if I can break it, somebody else can break it. Again, back to the
Yeah.
accountability thing. It's like I don't want to go talk to people about something that I don't have confidence in, something that I won't put my
Sure.
name on.
Yeah.
So if I break
Absolutely.
that's it. I've tried to break Topstar over and over again because if I do break it, like basically I have, my motto now after all this, OCD stuff is now, fail fast, fix faster. Right. So if I break it now, it's little things that break. It's not the business model that breaks. It's like, oh shoot, we have to pivot from doing this to this, and we just do it. So
Hmm.
it's not the end of the world. But
Yeah.
those were the two
So
biggest things that I took away from it.
yeah, that's good. And when you say business first, just to drill down a little bit, and
Yeah.
because I think I have some similar experience. Um, but essentially, you're saying the actual fundamentals of the business, and also making sure that the demand is actually there
Correct.
for this product or service, versus
Yes.
building out some massive infrastructure and then build it and they will come. Because honestly, I've made this mistake myself, and where
Yeah.
we have a loan servicing company, and it's doing well now, but the mistake we made was just, we got all these licenses and we did all this work up front, and all this capital, and and it's like, and then it was crickets. And
Yeah.
it's like, we didn't do any market testing. We didn't know, you know, if people would actually show up, right?
Right.
And so I think we had the cart before the horse there. So you're saying market testing, making, talking to potential clients, or making
Yeah.
sure that the business model is sound before
Yeah.
you go and make it more efficient, or add bells and whistles to it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like we have the unfortunate or fortunate now luxury or luck, depending on how you look at it, of working in a two-sided marketplace, right? So we're building a team of student athletes, and then we are also going out to get brands. So we have this marketplace where it's like a chicken or the egg type thing. Like, how do you get the brands if you don't have the student athletes? And if you don't have any way to sort of incentivize the student athletes to stay on the team, like, how are you going to get student athletes? So that was one of the biggest questions that we had going into it. It was like, okay, like, can we build this marketplace? Like, is it even, will people actually buy into what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
So before we did anything, I mean, I've talked to 50 plus brands and agencies, dozens, hundreds of people and parents and athletes and every single possible person that I could speak to before we made a call to understand, like, if is the way that we're trying to do this, does it provide value? Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like, I took a
Right.
whole bunch of what I experienced and what you experienced as student athletes and put it into this,
Sure.
because
Sure.
that, from a credibility standpoint, when you're talking to parents, is huge. But,
So true.
just my work at Anheuser-Busch, right? My understanding of how important local media is and how the local side really drives revenue, or who
Mm.
even to talk to on the local side from that perspective. Or
Mm-hmm.
my first real startup with, the one out of Georgia, Prime Point Media, that I mentioned, where it was 12 people that I went to in
Mm-hmm.
2000. We aggregated all these little tiny things that individually were relatively insignificant, but
Mm-hmm.
when you network them together and had this massive sort of network effect, it became magical. So all the things that I've learned over the course of my career, coupled with, like, my own experience with, this kid that I know that went to Stanford that, got drafted by the Reds, like, talking to him, I'm like, how do you not have any NIL deals? This makes no sense to me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to the pros. You have a 3.75 GPA from Stanford and no one's talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like with my own kids, like, what would I need to see as a parent to come out and to trust somebody like with my kid? Because that's what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, talking to parents, and you're like, hey, like, I know you don't know me and I know we came in on a good reference, but it's still my
Mm-hmm.
kid. So
Sure.
we had dozens of these conversations and spoke to dozens of brands, and, like, I mean, literally like 50 brands, 50 parent, 100 parent, I don't even know anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So many brands
Yeah.
that we finally honed in on the fact that, okay, the way we're doing this actually does make sense. And then you take a look at the NIL, name, image, likeness market in general, and it's like it's complete chaos. Like Billy Carter. I don't know if you know Billy. Billy's a
Yeah. I've
Gettysburg
followed him on
grad.
LinkedIn. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very big name in NIL. And he hates when you say the Wild West. He's like, oh my
Mm.
God. So I'm not going to say Wild West.
We won't say Wild
Chaos.
West, Billy.
This is chaos, Bill. So
Yeah.
it's still complete chaos. There's no product. There's no standards. Like, the NCAA just continues to just, like, look ridiculous in the way they're managing this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, as a
Well,
brand, as a guy
that
that
smells
worked,
like opportunity to me, right? That's
yeah,
opportunity.
yeah, exactly. As a guy that understand that knows what brands want and need and knows how they buy and knows what they need to see, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you're just not providing it. It just doesn't exist. So that's how, like, the entirety of, like, Popstar comes
Mm-hmm.
together, right? We
Yeah, I
take
love
all
that.
stuff and shake it in and put it in and try to break things and throw things out and bring things back in. And
Yeah.
here we are.
One of the
2 years
topics
later,
we,
actually. Crazy.
how many? Too many? Two
Two. Yeah.
years? Gotcha.
Yeah.
Too many? No, I'm kidding. Um, yeah,
Sometimes.
it takes a lot of work. I mean, it's in a lot of time to build something great. But what I
Yeah.
love about what you're saying is, yes, you are relying on your experience and your own passion. Um, but it's not only about that. I mean, I love that that's a factor, but one of the things that comes up on the show is, you know, some people say, oh, follow your heart, follow your passion, and you never work a day in your life. That's great. And I hope that you enjoy what you're doing. And everyone, but if
Plus,
you're
it's
not
meth.
out there, if you're not right. Yeah, certain things might be enjoyable. You should probably not do them. Um, but you're out there listening, you're listening to people and talking to people,
Yes.
and you're taking feedback from the marketplace and the industry, as because you want to add value. That's what you were talking
Yes.
about. It's
Yes.
not just, what does Jake want to do all day? I love sports, so I'm going to do something in sport. No, it's like, no, I understand this industry because I was a student athlete. I worked in, similar in different industries in a similar way, taking that experience, but then going out and listening about what is the need, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that people miss sometimes. It's like, that's why I think you're going to be successful with this because you're actually listening many times over to where the need actually is. So, um, okay, so high level, what is Top Star Athletic Club? And I know you touched on it, but
Yeah.
um, what what is it exactly?
So Topstar takes a team approach, right? We look at the entire student athlete population much differently than anybody else. Our sort of standards are not predicated on the number of followers that kids have. We equally look at academics and athletics, and we only really focus on the top 50, large universities and liberal arts colleges. So per US News and World Report, that's like our quote unquote Bible. So any schools that fall into that 100 subset, those are the types of student athletes that we want on Topstar, because first and foremost, like, these kids are killers, like from a athletics perspective, from an academics perspective. Just take lacrosse, all right, like, which is what we know and kind of where we
Yeah.
started. um all the Ivy leagues, like, I think there's 4 or 5 of the Ivies in the top 20 right now. Like,
Hmm.
pretty
Yeah.
much, there aren't many schools in the top 20 from a lacrosse perspective that aren't in the top 50 from an academic perspective, which is
Mm.
crazy. It's insane. Um, like, that's our target, right? Because we want these kids who are super well balanced, that have high integrity, that understand that the work that they're putting in on the field, like, means something, right?
Hmm.
And we also take a look, we have a GPA requirement that we have social and digital integrity requirements. We have, like, you have to represent yourself in your school with good character. Like, we
Mm.
are really trying to help these kids, like, like, we act as a second set of coaches. So we're really trying to help these kids, like, stay the path, right?
Hmm.
Show them that there is a sort of way that you can move forward with academics and athletics. We also don't
Hmm.
necessarily focus on the revenue generating sports like football and basketball. So our niche doesn't really fall in there, because quite frankly, like, when you're talking about that level of people, when you're talking about like the Bronny Jameses, you're talking about the Mannings, you're
Hmm.
talking about the Sanderses of the world, like, we can't compete. And I don't want to
Hmm.
compete there, because there's plenty of people going after that, and there's a great
Hmm.
market there, and they'll do just fine. But again, back to like our experience, right? This is
Yeah.
where, like, we differ in that the kids that we bring in, like, we sign them as employees. So they
Hmm.
are all employees of Topstar. So
Okay.
as they continue to meet our standards, as they continue to go through our system, right, they get valuable work experience. So some of these kids now, when they finally sort of spit out into the professional world, will
Hmm.
have 3 or 5 years of experience working for
Hmm.
Topstar. They can put that on their resume, and then they can
Something
go
you
out and
didn't have, right? Um,
no.
so okay, two things then. Where are you in the sort of life cycle of Topstar? Like, did you sign your first client last week, or where are we with the
Yeah, sure.
business itself? And then secondly, walk us through just high level sort of the client journey. So yeah, if you could answer those
Yeah.
two, that'd be great.
Yeah. So we again, this is like one of those things that I was going to talk about when we sort of went out of off
Yeah.
script.
Yeah.
About me, like, just try and get out of my own way, because, like,
Yeah.
I am a
Yeah. Talk about
perfectionist,
that.
and ugh, well, it's too late now. We did the other things. No, I'm a
We'll bring you
perfectionist.
back.
No, it's fine. I'm a perfectionist, and I just, because of the nature of what goalies do, we live in this weird world where, like, fractions of seconds and fractions of inches is the difference between a save and a goal.
It's
So it's
true.
like, you have to be obsessed with that razor sharp precision, and it makes you a perfectionist and makes you OCD, and you sort of apply everything in your world to that, and that doesn't work for startups. So
No.
now this gets back to what you just asked me, which is, tell us about the team, right? Like, so we started interviewing folks well over a year ago at this point. And we formally sort of launched the team last August, where we started finally, like, where I finally got out of my own way.
Mm,
Thanks in huge part to my wife, Michelle. And just, she was like, why aren't you doing this? Like, just do it. I'm like, well, I'm waiting to have more. Like, why?
mm,
And the brands told me very clearly, like, what they needed. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I want to, like, suck the air out of the room, because that's just sort of the way, like, when I stepped on the field, I was like, yeah, you know what? Went to the wrong high school from the wrong state for lacrosse. Too bad. I'm here. Deal with me. And that's kind of the way I looked at it with Topstar. I'm like, too bad we're here. Deal with us. Except that doesn't work because you don't always get what you want when you're in a startup, and sometimes good is good enough. So we went out and started
Totally.
talking to kids. We signed the right amount of kids, and we started paying them last August. So as of right now, like we're August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. 9 months
Hmm.
into paying the kids. So as soon as we got all the kids on board, then we started talking to the brands, and the brands came quickly because basically, what we would tell them is like, we have this process that we call authenticity as a service, where we actually lay eyes on all these kids, right? We talk to them, we interview them. And I mentioned it earlier, like with the
Hmm.
parents and kids and everything. We actually talk to them. We look at their social profiles. We make sure they fit us, right?
Hmm.
So we talk to them, and then we like, make sure that they understand what it's all about. And then after we go through the process, and after they do go through the application process, which is on our website, it's not easy. It's a little bit extensive. It vets people out that way too.
Hmm.
We sign them. So when we put all that together for the brands, which need something simple to understand, they need a single point of contact. They need guaranteed delivery, which doesn't exist in influencer marketing, by the way. It's really odd.
Hmm.
And they also need to understand that these guys are brand safe. Like that is a huge problem. Ad fraud and just,
Hmm.
half the Instagram accounts are fake right now,
Hmm.
49.2% or something crazy.
Wow.
Like you have no idea. And now throw AI into the mix. Like all of a
Sure.
sudden, the world of influencers gets really weird. We take all that away for brands. So when we start talking to them about, our brand safety guarantee and our authenticity as a service, they're
Hmm.
like, oh, wait, tell me more. So that's sort of like what the brand journey is. And since then,
Gotcha.
we have done 7 brand campaigns, I guess. We started in November. So we've had, one or two every month that we're talking to. We have
Okay.
got a bunch that want to do business with us. And
Yeah.
then, we have a couple brands out there that want to do long-term partnerships. And then we also have, agencies from boutique to massive holding company that are like,
Hmm.
what you're doing is interesting. Tell me more.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
it's been since I was able to get out of my own way,
Hmm.
it's been fantastic, which is it's really difficult for me, like because I am like
Well,
to a very large
yeah.
degree a perfectionist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, everyone's situation is different, but you need to have high standards, right? You can't just like, oh, just whatever works because your business will be terrible. I mean, you've got to
Yeah.
be able to deliver on what you say you're going to do. You got to
Yes.
have attention to detail, so leaning toward perfectionism is not necessarily a bad thing because you need high quality, right? And
Yes.
but the flip side is you're never going to get anything done, especially in the
No.
the startup world. And I'm not I'm talking to you, I'm talking to me, I'm talking to any entrepreneur out there.
Yeah.
It is just, it's never, I mean, they say perfect is the enemy of good. I've heard perfect is the enemy of progress, because it's just never going to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
So when you say get out of your own way, is that really, that's what you're talking about? Is you were slow to start the company because you wanted all of the stars to be aligned?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I recently sort of came across this book. What the heck's that guy's name? I forget his name. I'm sorry, Barry. I forget his last name. Barry. He's a PhD. He wrote this book, Everything I Learned to Know About Business. I learned from the Grateful Dead, which seems completely ridiculous, but it literally like it's this phrase called strategic improvisation. And if you know anything about the Dead, like you understand, like they weren't about their releases, they were about the live
Hmm.
shows. The live shows were
Hmm.
all about
Right.
improvisation. They took that practice across their entire business.
Barry
So
Barnes, PhD.
yes, there you go, Barry Bond, Barry Barnes. He is
Barnes. Yeah.
awesome. He's such a great guy. I've had the opportunity to talk to him.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, no, he's super cool guy. One of the things like in understanding strategic improvisation was learning and sort of realizing that as athletes, like we do it with second nature. We
Hmm.
really do because basically, what the basic sort of philosophy of that is, it's like, adjust to the present, react to the present, and then don't lose sight on the end goal. So it's like
Hmm.
with every lacrosse play, every single one, no matter how perfect we run it, right?
Yeah.
There are variables in there that are infinitely changing, whether it's a bad pass, low pass, you got a defender on you, you don't have a defender on you. We just sort of
For
adjust to
sure.
it because we understand that the goal is, in this case, to score a goal or to win the game.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
like inadvertent masters of this, and we don't even realize that it's like this incredible power that we have. And so, in reading Barry's book and understanding that, it's like I've really applied that to what we do here now, and I'm like, wow, it's been a very eye-opening book from, ironically, the Grateful Dead.
I love that. Yeah. It brings to mind a couple of, there was the Mike Tyson quote about getting punched in the mouth or
Everybody's got
something.
a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Yep,
Exactly. And then there's a
that's the
military
one.
version of that too. But and the military is obsessed with planning. And I say that, I mean, you need to plan. You need to have a
Yes,
strategy. You need, you can't just like wing it, right? But you have to know that, like you said, you're going to have to adjust along
yes,
the way. So you kind of you need both for sure.
yes.
Love that. So, man, we have we're pretty much out of time, but I've got some rapid
What?
fire.
Oh man! Wow.
There's so much more we could uncover here. I've got some rapid fire questions for you though. You
Shoot.
ready?
Yes.
This one trips people up a little bit sometimes.
Okay.
What do people misunderstand about you, Jake?
Oh my God. Where do I even
Where do I
start?
start? Okay, then what do people understand about you?
Same answer. Not much.
Not much.
No. I don't fit in a box, man. Like I've never fit in a box. So it's like, I guess I tend to have like a very dry sense of humor. So like I'll just say things deadpan and people won't know if
Yeah,
I'm serious or not. So
yeah,
like,
I get
I'm
that.
like, yeah, I don't think you should do that. And I'm totally like,
Yeah, I have
okay.
to clarify too. No, 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 I'm being serious. No, that was a joke. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
but what's one of you? We've talked a lot about some of the pain you've been through with different
Yeah.
divorce and emotional health and OCD
Yeah.
and getting out of your own way. Um, what's one of your biggest failures, and what did you learn from that experience?
Oh man, one of my biggest failures. That's a great question. Wow. There's so many. Where do I even start? Um, Man, I would say that one of my biggest failures was probably not believing in myself sooner.
Mm,
Not understand, like, because we all have that gut feeling, right? And like you don't, your brain doesn't want to listen to it. And I think I probably would have made a lot of different decisions if I had listened to it. But at the same time, it's like, we get put on this path for a reason, right? Everything, like, I sort of believe that,
sure. Yeah.
like, all the things that have happened in the past, like, that have happened to get us to this point, right?
Yeah.
If I don't post whatever on LinkedIn or whatever on Facebook, like, we don't have this conversation. So
That's true.
it's not to say I would change anything, because I would change absolutely nothing about everything I've done. But I
Hmm.
just think, like, if I had more faith in myself, more belief in myself, which is, inside that crease, absolute
Mm.
overconfident, like crazy confidence. You just stepped out off that field though, not so much, so it
Mm.
didn't translate for me into real life, in, I guess, real life. It
Gotcha.
didn't translate to
Yeah.
me out of lacrosse.
Right.
So having that confidence, not like arrogance, but confidence in
Yeah.
me side of the sport, probably would have done me a much,
Yeah.
I wish I probably would have tapped into that earlier.
I mean, I think arrogance it is a fine line, but it's sometimes arrogance is actually, I think, a reflection of a lack of confidence. It's like
Yeah,
overcompensating for a lack of
sure.
confidence. But um, trying to you get that humble confidence is where I try to get to, but it's
Try to
it's
be
not it's
there.
not easy.
Try to be there. I,
um,
I don't have that with lacrosse, or when I'm talking to people about lacrosse, because I'm like,
yeah,
listen, man, we I don't know if we're on
yeah,
the same level
right. I was the man. Um,
here. You said it, not me.
if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some
Oh,
advice, what would that be?
I think probably what I just said.
Yeah,
It's like,
believe in yourself.
listen, yeah, like, listen, like, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah,
Like, you're not going to know what you want to do when you graduate. Like, first of all, like, you're going to have no idea. So,
yeah,
like, just pick something and do it. And you can
yeah,
figure it out along the way. Like, you're not going to get stuck there. It's
sure.
okay. Like, the first job is not the one you do for 50 years, like our parents did.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, for sure. Um, if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose and why?
Ooh, man. God, there's so many.
they could still be, this person can still be alive today. Doesn't have to
That's
be
not
like,
fun. That's not fun. Um, Man, can I pick two? 'Cause
sure.
I'd love to have coffee with Elvis.
Okay.
That guy, man, he probably
Nice.
has some stories.
He didn't fit
And
in a box either.
no, and JFK, actually.
Okay.
I'd love to
Now,
have coffee with cats.
is that like one session of with the three of you talking, or two separate
No, that could
sessions?
be chaos. There's probably, yeah, no, no.
Yeah, no. All right. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, Jake, what would you do with it?
Probably give it away.
Okay.
Honestly, like I mean, I would for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, how much money do I need? Like I've thought about this a lot actually, because
Mhm.
like when you're in startups, like, and you start having people talk about, exits and things like that, and like they're
Right.
like, well, to understand, like, who are you building this for? Tell me
Right.
the
Right.
companies you're
Right.
building this for,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
drives that thinking. You think about these things, it's like
Sure.
I would probably give it all. I would give 80% of it away.
Hmm. Love that. In your business, what is one challenge that you're facing right now?
Growth,
Growth. So
growth.
just from just getting more clients or more
You've got,
investors.
yeah, investors. Like, we have no shortage of kids that want to be part of this. We have no shortage
Mhm.
of brands that want to be part of this. I have no
Mhm.
shortage of high level, people in
Mhm.
general that want to be part of the Top Star. I mean, this has
Mhm.
been, that I will say was, I mentioned it earlier, like bringing in Harvey and Tanya into Top Star was the best decision that I made. I mean, it just was, because first of all, they're awesome people. Like, Harvey's one
Mhm.
of the nicest, most genuine people you'll ever meet. Super well
Mhm.
respected. His wife Tanya is like this really smart marketing person, and like together there's this fantastic team, and they're hilarious, and they're just
Mhm.
super down to earth. Um, but like we're having, like, we have no shortage of people that believe in what we're doing. It's
Mhm.
like you've got former, like, major athletic brand people that want to help us. We've
Mhm.
got professional agents that are like, oh no, I get this. Like, every single student athlete I've spoken to is like, wow, this is interesting. So we have no shortage of like interest in people. It's like,
Mhm.
we just need to get to those people who are going to believe in our vision for NIL, and believe in like how we're trying to make it better, that
Mhm.
can actually write checks. So it's
Right.
like that
Sure.
that's really the growth challenge, and that's for every, like, literally every startup. Like,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
have those challenges, and that's one of them.
And every startup has all kinds of challenges. And so
Yes.
it's just, if you don't have a challenge in your business, that's probably a little
Something's
concerning.
wrong. You should probably just mow lawns.
Right. Exactly. Um, what is as we wrap up here, if you could try any other occupation outside of anything you've ever done, off the wall question, what would you
Oh
try?
man, MMA.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's when I said goalies have a couple screws loose. I mean,
Well,
I did jujitsu for a few years, but man, MMA's next
well,
level stuff.
so I have a friend who owns an MMA studio, I guess you call it, or gym, I guess. Yeah.
Hmm.
And he's one of my oldest friends. Like, I've known him for God since I was 17 years old. I mountain biked with him. Like, I've hung out with him forever.
Hmm.
And they own a gym, and they put some really good fighters into the UFC.
Hmm.
And it was like during the divorce time, right? And
Hmm.
he's like, you should just start coming, man. Like, what are you doing? I'm like,
Hmm.
all right. So I start going, and I get hooked. And so for like 2 years, I'm going like 3 days a week to MMA, sometimes 4 days a
Wow.
week. I'm spending hours at this gym. And
Hmm.
one of the main reasons I'm spending hours at this gym is because at one point, my buddy Bill, whose wife owns this thing, goes to me, he's like, he's like, you probably wouldn't be bad at fighting if you wanted to do it now. Yeah, you know what? Never mind. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? What do you
You
mean? Never mind.
mean
What?
never mind.
Like, what? So yeah, MMA.
Gotcha. I like it except for the getting hit part. But you
It's
mentioned
big.
one book. Any other books that you can recommend for our
Let My
listeners?
People Go Surfing. Janshvar. It's
Okay.
great one. My friend John Brubaker writes a bunch of really great business books. I cannot remember the name of it right now. I'm totally spacing because you put me on the spot.
All
But
good.
he does. He's a best-selling author. He's fantastic. Coach Brew. He's amazing. And
Nice.
then Jocko's book, Discipline Equals Freedom.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's a good one. All right, two more questions. What is one question that I have not asked you that you wish I had?
Oh boy. Do you want me to write you a check for $500,000?
Yeah. So if if I do that, you can help me through the divorce. Um, anyway, that was like, you know, a dark joke, but
Yes.
I like that. All right. Last question. Where can our listeners find you online, Jake?
LinkedIn,
Spell your
Jake
last
Kovalcik,
name.
KOV as in Velociraptor, ALCIK.
Nice.
I own all the consonants, so no one else can have any. Uh,
Love that.
they're all mine. So LinkedIn, Topstar AC on Instagram, Topstar Athletic Club on LinkedIn also. I'm on LinkedIn and I got a weird name that goes back to AIM, AOL Instant Messenger from the 90s. Fish Jake. So I'm on
Nice.
Instagram and everywhere
Fantastic.
else. The
Perfect.
thing.
Jake Kovalcik, this has been a blast. We went a little long because I was enjoying it. I think I know our listeners uh, have enjoyed it as well. So, any parting words?
No, I'm really grateful for this, Jamie. Thank you so much. I mean, like you said, like it's been a while since we connected, but
Yeah,
I'm really like this has been awesome. I'm grateful for the invite. Thank you so much, man.
absolutely. I know you guys are gonna crush it. It's gonna be awesome. So, thanks for spending your time with us, and to the listener out there, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks all. Take care.